it into the chat and I'll... Okay, my video is on and my mic is on. Let's check that you can hear me. My name is Oliver, but everybody calls me Ollie, and I'd like to warmly welcome you to today's session called Listen Up, Improving Student Listening Success. Now, to start us off, let's check that my audio is working. In the chat window, can you share with me how many years have you been teaching English? Type that into the chat and I'll take a look. Don't tell me how old you are, that's always a secret, but tell me how many years have you been teaching English? Let's have a look. Okay, I'm going to monitor the chat. There is usually a delay, so let's see what comes through. Okay, everyone is saying that they can hear. The chat is going crazy. It's zooming past incredibly quickly. I can just catch, wow, 21 years, 12 years, 13 years, 2 years, 1 year. Welcome. We have literally thousands of years of teaching experience here, and I'm excited to have you with me in this room. And I encourage you to share your experience in the chat as we go through. So if you're an experienced teacher, welcome. I'm really happy to have you here today. I hope you will get some new ideas and share your ideas in the chat. And if you're a new teacher, an especial welcome, an especially big welcome to you too. I look forward to supplementing your teaching toolkit with some ideas for listening today. So a warm welcome to everybody. Now, to get us going today, just to mention, I'm going to be working with Tieng and 6 Friends Plus today, and I'm going to be focused on listening. So listen up, everybody. We're going to focus on improving student listening success. As I said, my name is Oliver Bailey, and I've taught all ages of student, but I started my teaching career teaching EFL students who were teenagers and young teenagers in classes of 35 or 40 students in state schools here in Japan. I'm looking forward to sharing that experience here today, which you can adapt. I've also been working for Oxford University Press for over 20 years, and I look forward to sharing with you how we have designed Tieng and 6 Friends Plus to give you a great listening experience and your students lots of listening practice when they use the material. Now, every good lesson, every good session needs an agenda, and you can see mine on the screen here. Let me run this through you. So I've divided this session into 5 different sections. In the introduction, I'll remind you what I'm going to talk about today, and I'll ask you to complete a couple of polls. Then in the second section, listening in Tieng and 6 Friends Plus, I'll explain how this coursebook teaches listening, and I'll give you an example from one of the listening units so you can see how it works step by step, and also how the listening activity sits within a complete unit. In the third section, teaching listening, we will review the steps for teaching a listening lesson again, and I will give you some activities and ideas to give your students lots of extra listening input, and these ideas should be simple and easy for you to do in your classes. And I look forward to sharing ideas with you today. In the fourth section, there will be a reminder of the resources that this course has for you, both created by Oxford University Press and our valued partner, Fungnam Education. And finally, I will leave time for a quick summary and some questions. So that's our plan. Now, before we get going, just a reminder, because we're using the internet today and a webinar, if there are any problems, if I have to drop out or I lose my connection, don't worry, stay with us. I will come into the room as soon as I can. Your moderator will look after you in my absence, just in case things go wrong. Fingers crossed they don't. Okay, so let's look first of all at this introduction. So the first thing I want to know is, what is your favorite skill to teach? Reading, writing, listening, or speaking? Now, my colleague Sophia is going to put a poll on your screen, and I'd like you to choose one option and let me know. Now, I've been tricky. I'm not letting you choose all of them. I'm letting you choose just one of them. So, what is your favorite skill to teach in the classroom? Reading, writing, listening, or speaking? Please complete the poll and click submit, and then we'll take a look at the answers together in just a moment. Now I can see, I have a special screen. I can see that many of you are answering now, which is great. Okay, fantastic. We're getting a lot of answers coming through. Over 1,000 responses already. Let's keep going all the way up to get everybody. Okay, here it comes. Okay, perfect. We're nearly there now. Lots of responses. Okay, I'll just give you 10 more seconds. What do you think is going to be the most popular answer? Will it be listening? Because you know I'm interested in listening, or will it be something else? Okay, I'm going to ask Sophia to close the poll. Now, you can look at polls. So if you go to the poll tab in your window and you click closed, you can see the results there. And in these results, the most popular skill was reading. 48% of you, nearly 700 of you said reading was the most popular skill. After that was speaking, 24%. Listening came third, and writing came fourth. Now, I'm not surprised writing came fourth, but I'm a little surprised listening wasn't higher. And we're going to focus on listening today. So just tell me in the chat window, why do you or don't you like teaching listening? What are your thoughts about teaching listening? Put those into the chat window as we continue, and I'll keep an eye on there. Just in general, I won't be monitoring the chat window all the time because it goes very quickly and I need to focus on my content. But let me know your thoughts in there about what you do or don't like teaching about listening. Now, in the meantime, as we go forward, I'm going to ask you another poll here. Okay. And my question in this second poll is, have you seen the course overview module? Now, this is an online free short course that we have prepared to give you lots of information about Tieng and 6 Friends Plus. So you can go there anytime online to learn all about the components, the methodology, and how the book is put together. So I'm going to put a second poll on the screen, and let me know if you've seen the course overview module. Please be honest. I'm not checking the answers. I'm just interested in whether you've seen this or not. So, have you seen the course overview module online? Yes, no, or I don't even know what that is. Choose one and click submit. And I'll take a look at the polls again. Okay, so I'm looking at the poll responses now. Wow, so many people giving responses. That's great. I'll just give it a few more seconds. Okay, we're coming up to 1,400 responses now, which is great. It's so exciting to see so many of you here today. Thank you for joining us. Okay, it's slowing down now. It's slowing down now. So I'm going to ask Sophia to close the poll now. Okay, so let's take a look at the polls tab, and you can see the responses under the closed section. So it looks as though the majority of you, 44% of you, have seen the course overview module online, which is great. 38% of you say you haven't seen it. And 19% of you say you don't know what that is. Well, don't worry. At the end of this webinar today, I will share links and information for you so that you can go onto that anytime to learn more about Tieng and 6 Friends Plus. The reason that's so important is today I'm focused on listening. And in this webinar series, we're going to look at different skills. So if you want to know more about the basic information about Tieng and 6, how it's organized, what the components are, you can always go to that course overview module. And again, I will share that information with you at the end. So moving swiftly on the screen, I've got the abstract for today. This is what I'm going to focus on. So let's remind ourselves of my focus and my goals for this session. So please read the abstract, and when you've finished, please type F into the chat window. So please read the abstract on the screen, and please type F into the chat window, and I will monitor some of your answers about listening. Now, some of you saying that listening is difficult because of the speed of the listening. I understand. Students do worry about that. Some of you were talking about listening being difficult because sometimes it's just difficult to hear. And some of you mentioning listening because you're not confident teaching listening. And as a former teacher myself, I understand that. I really liked teaching listening because I remember specifically in class when I'm doing a listening activity with students, a listening comprehension, and they're listening really hard and you can see their brains working, and the student is listening and they have that moment where you see on their face they've understood, aha, I've got it, and they excitedly circle the answer on their page of the listening comprehension. I love that moment in a listening activity where students know that they've understood a foreign language. I find it very inspirational. So it looks as though most of you have finished reading the abstract. So just quickly to say, I'm going to focus today on, again, reviewing how listening is presented in Tieng and 6, so you can see how it works. And also, I'm going to, in the second half, share different activities you can use and adapt with different levels of students. And my advice today would be, it doesn't matter your experience level in the classroom. Please think about how you could adapt these activities for your own situation. That's the strength you have as a teacher. So you can see in the middle of the screen here, the blue book, Tieng and 6 Friends Plus. It sits in the Friends series, which is material which has been adapted and is ready for use in Vietnam. So we're going to focus on that today. And I'm going to take my examples from level 1, which you can see on the left-hand side. For this series of webinars, we're always going to use level 1 as a standard so that we can explain how the unit works and you can see it in context. Now, in the front of the book is a curriculum. I'm not going to dive into that. It's too small to really see, but just to note again, we're going to focus on Unit 1 at the beginning of the book because it's very standard and it's a good example. Now, I do mention that we'll look at the components, and later on, at the end of today's session, I will briefly review these components for you, but I want to draw your attention at this point to the teacher's guide. So look at the bottom right-hand side, the teacher's guide. I want to talk about the teacher's guide, and later on, I'll talk about the free materials on the website. As the world's largest university publishing company, we know how important it is to support you. So we've prepared a teacher's guide, which has lots of extra support, and that includes for the listening lessons. It has optional activities, background information, answer keys for the student book and workbook, and as you can see on the page here, it shows you the student book page and all of the teaching notes together in one book. So you only need to carry the teacher's guide into class. You don't need to carry the student book and the teacher's book, and that's really convenient. So on your screen here, you can see the student book page in the teacher's book, and you've got a step-by-step lesson plan all the way around, which you can use to guide your lessons if you want to. It's all there for you. Now, in my experience, many teachers only glance at the teacher's book, but in there you'll find lots of information, including ideas on teaching different levels of student. Okay, so let's go on to this second section. And what you can see is you can see me looking down. I'm just taking a look at my teacher's notes here and also my timer. I want to stay on time. Okay, so now let's take a look at listening in Tieng 6 Friends Plus. Okay, how many of you have any of you looked at the material in detail? Let me know. If you've never seen the material, let me know. My goal here is to show you how Tieng 6 does listening. We're going to look at a typical listening lesson, and we'll also look at where there is listening throughout the Tieng 6 coursebook. Okay. Now, before we go on, I think it's important that we think about the different stages of a listening lesson. In the chat window, I want you to tell me one or two of the different stages in a listening lesson. From your experience, or take a guess if you're a brand new teacher, can you give me one or two stages in a listening lesson? What's the first stage? What's the last stage? What are some of the stages in the middle? Let me see if you already have any good ideas. I'll keep an eye on the chat. Okay, I can't see you or hear you typing, so I'm waiting nervously, watching the chat. Let's see what your thoughts are. Think about a listening lesson. What are some of the stages of a listening lesson you can think of? Okay, I'm monitoring the chat. Let's see if we get anything coming through. Okay, some of you answering the questions, many of you saying you haven't seen the book yet. If you haven't seen the book yet, of course, this is the perfect webinar for you. I'm going to guide you through. Now I can see teachers answering my question. What are the different stages of a listening lesson? Some of you are saying pre-listening, while listening, post-listening. Exactly right. Great. So I've got you thinking about the different stages in a listening lesson. Let me now consolidate your knowledge together. So on the screen here is a typical listening lesson. Now I'm going to do a lot of talking today, but I want you to do some work as well. So maybe if you have a mobile phone or a place you can jot down a message or a paper and a pen, on the screen is a challenge for you. I've got 9 different phases in a listening lesson, but they are all jumbled up. They are out of order, and I want you to put them in order. Okay? You could do that in your mind. You could do it on a piece of paper. I've given you a hint. The first stage of a listening lesson is not checking the answers. Look on the screen where I've used the Vietnam star to draw your attention. The first stage would be warm up on the topic. So that's A. Take a look at this jumbled activity. In your mind, can you put these steps in the right order? I'll give you just 1 minute to do so. If you have a piece of paper, you can write them down, or you can just do this in your mind. While you're doing that, I will take a sip of water. Now, for many of you, or perhaps all of you, this is probably review, but this forms the basis of what I'm going to talk about later. I'm just watching my clock, just giving you another 30, 40 seconds to think about the correct order for the stages in the listening lesson here. Thank you, everybody, for being active in the chat. I really appreciate it. Okay, 30 seconds. So you're looking at the screen. You're thinking about the correct order for these stages. You don't have to type them all into the chat. It'll take too long. Okay, I can see some of you are typing. You're obviously very fast typists. That's great. Okay, 10 seconds. Okay, all right. So let me show you the answers, and you can take a look and see if you were correct. Okay, so what I think the easiest thing for me to do is just to put them in the correct stages of the lesson. So on your screen now is a typical listening lesson with the 9 stages in the correct order. Okay, and I'm following the chat. It looks as though most of you have a good idea. But this is a very typical listening lesson in a course book. Okay, and the good news is that this is a very effective listening lesson in many ways. It starts with a warm-up, number 1. Then we get the students to listen for gist, listen for that general information about the topic. We set those listening for gist questions. The students listen. Then we check the answers, number 4 and number 5. Then we set more questions where we ask the students to listen for detail. So now they're listening for specific words or phrases or answers. We play the audio again. The students check their answers for the second activity. And then finally, number 9, we might use that listening for some kind of extension activity. So this is a very traditional and effective listening lesson. Do you agree? It starts with a nice warm-up. It starts broad with listening for gist, and then it goes down into listening for detail. So this is a typical listening lesson. And I wanted to review this with you, first of all, because we're going to see how that applies to Tieng and 6 Friends Plus listening lessons. So here is the organization of a unit of Tieng and 6 Friends Plus. And in other webinars, you'll look at sessions like reading, for example. Today, we're going to focus on the vocab and listening. And you can see I've highlighted the vocab and listening section on the screen for you. It's 1 page, takes around 45 minutes, and it fits between language focus on the left, which is grammar, and another language focus on the right. And today we're going to look at this listening lesson in detail. So, how do we teach listening in Tieng and 6 Friends Plus? In a moment, I'll show you the page and zoom in. But in general, the first thing we're going to do is introduce and practice the vocabulary in some kind of warm-up. So earlier in the unit, students have already met some vocabulary words. Now we're going to give them a second vocabulary set, introduce and practice those. In the next stage, we're going to do listening comprehension activities to develop students' listening skills, listening for gist, listening for detail. And then finally, we're going to use these listening activities to model the grammar for the next lesson and to use this vocabulary. So students are not only meeting the vocabulary, they're hearing it in the listening lesson and they're using it as well. So that's how the listening lesson works in general, but let me give you some detail. So think back to our listening lesson plan that I gave you. What was the first step? The first step was warm up. And you can see here, I've highlighted in a red box the top of the vocabulary and listening activity. And what is it? It's a thinking activity. We warm up the students by asking them to think about the topic. In this lesson, the topic is old places and new places. And you can see some vocabulary items there on the screen. So we start the listening lesson with a warm-up, which is great, activating the students' background knowledge and introducing them to some vocabulary. In the next stage, down the page, we're going to do a listening activity. Can you see on the screen, you have a listening activity here. This is listening to some people talking. These are street interviews, or what we call Vox Pops, street interviews. And here, students are listening for the general topic. They have to listen for the topic that is going to be in the listening passage. So here, you have a choice of general topics. Is the topic going to include restaurants, trains, the park, buses and bikes, New York, etc.? So quite general, quite high level. Okay, and then we will check the answers. After that, we're going to do listening for detail. So here on the screen, you can see track 1.16. Students are going to listen for these exact sentences. They're going to listen for detailed answers, and they're going to write true or false, a traditional true or false T or F activity that we're all familiar with. So this is listening for detail. So this is the second opportunity for listening. After that, at the bottom of the listening page, we have a personalization activity. Can you see number 5? It says, think of 3 places. And so it's asking you, it's asking the student. So they're personalizing the listening and thinking about their own situation. Okay? And then finally, you can see activity 6 there. Okay? Activity 6, we get the students to do a speaking activity. Why is that? We want students to do something, to be productive, not only to be receptive. So I hope you can see that this lesson follows a very simple step-by-step approach, a tried and trusted approach to teaching listening in your classroom. And I think that's great. It's easy to follow and everything you need is on the page. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in the teacher's guide, you find full details with extra activities, background information, and the correct answers. But I've also got a nice surprise for you. And I know that everybody likes surprises and everybody likes free support. So let me just remind you that on the website of our partner, Phung Nam Education, you will find downloadable lesson plans written for you in Vietnam, which give you extra detail and ideas on how to structure this lesson for your classes. You can go to the website that you see on the screen. Don't do it right now. Well, let's do it another time, but you can go there and all of the additional lesson plans are prepared for you, which you can download for free and use to plan your lessons, ready to go. I think that's a great example of the kind of support that we want you to have so that you can get going with your classes. Okay. So we've looked at the listening lesson, okay, and here it is on the screen. So we've introduced some vocabulary, we've done some listening for gist, we've done some detailed listening as well. What I want to do now, though, is to give you examples of where else we can do listening in Tieng and 6 Friends Plus. And the good news is that there is lots of listening opportunity all the way through a unit of the book, and that's great. Why is this important? Tell me in the chat, how often do your students meet every week? How many English classes do you have with them? Let me know in the chat. The reason that I'm so excited about all of these different opportunities for listening is we want to give the students lots of listening input to help them get used to listening, to expose them to English. And I'm happy to say that Tieng and 6 offers lots and lots of opportunities for you all the way through the different lessons. Wow, the chat is going super quickly, so it's difficult for me to see almost what's being written there. Okay, many of you giving answers from previously, that's great. Okay, I'm just going to keep an eye on the chat. Let me know how many English lessons you have a week. In my experience, you can never have enough input, okay? We want to expose the students as much as we possibly can. Now, many of you are saying 3 or 4 lessons a week. Do you think that's enough? That may feel tiring, but in terms of the input the students get, we want to give them all this exposure. Now, in my lessons, when I was teaching junior high school, 12, 13-year-olds, I only saw them twice a week, and that wasn't enough. But the great thing you can see here is lots of listening input. And I'm going to very quickly give you examples of where you can do extra listening in the book. So on the screen, you can see this is the first lesson of the unit, and this is the vocabulary. But what you can see here is video activities are integrated. So every vocabulary lesson has video. Okay, so video is great for extra listening practice. And you can see on the screen here with the star, you've got a play video option, and you can download the video or use it in the classroom presentation tool on the screen, which I'll mention to you later. But there in the vocabulary lesson, there is video, which is great for extra listening, and I'll give you an activity later. In the reading lesson, you can see we have this reading passage here. But what do we notice about the reading passage? The reading passage also is recorded, so students can listen and read along. And that's very, very good for their English, very good for their listening, and it supports their reading skills as well. So right there is extra listening in the reading passage, which is great, further exposure. That's on the audio CD, or you can download the audio as well. But that's not all. If I go to the speaking section, you can see in the speaking section here at the top, we have a model dialogue. And I love dialogues because they're great for students to follow step by step. But what I really like about this, again, in Tieng and 6, is that we provide dialogue videos. So this dialogue has a video where you can watch this conversation happening. And that also provides extra listening opportunities for the students. Again, I'll give you an activity to have some fun with that video later, but I just wanted to show you that there's extra listening. And also in the CLIL lesson, which is towards the end of the unit. Now this might look like a bit of dry reading for you. You can see here there's some reading about maps, but again, we've provided this audio for you so students can listen and read at the same time. And we know from research, and I've shared a link on the screen here, that students reading while listening really helps their English and improves their comprehension. Okay, and I think I've just got 2 more parts to mention. Here is the progress review. So after every 2 units, there's a progress review page, which provides activities you can do to practice and review everything in the previous 2 lessons. And what you'll notice here on the bottom right-hand side of that review page is there's a vocabulary and listening activity, which is recorded for you. So more listening input. In this case, it's a matching activity. So I hope that you can see we're getting lots of different opportunities to listen. But listening is not only true or false. It's not only check the boxes. Tieng and 6 has what we call the options page. And here is an example. The options page gives you optional extra activities which you can do if you have students who finish early or if you want to do a more intensive course. And And in this example, this is extra listening and speaking. And at the top of the page, you can see we have a chart where students listen and complete the chart. So we have many different kinds of listening activity as well. And of course, that's really important. Phew. Okay, so that's a very, very quick whistle-stop tour of all of the different listening opportunities in a unit of Tieng and 6 Friends Plus. Okay, so let me know in the chat window. Do you think that there's lots of listening opportunities there? Do you think that that gives lots of extra input? I think it does, but I'd be interested in knowing what you think as well. Let me know in the chat window, because again, we want to give students all those extra input opportunities, and I'm happy to see that that is provided in the material in the textbook for you. Okay, so up until this point, we've talked about Tieng and 6, and we've looked at the listening lesson and how it's organized very step by step. I've talked about the support that the teacher's guide gives you, and I've quickly shown you different places in Tieng and 6 where you can find lots of extra listening opportunities. Now in this section, what I want to do is I want to look at listening in more detail, and specifically I'm going to give you extra activities which you can try and do with your students and adapt these for your situation. So I hope that extra activities will be useful for you, and as we go through, I'll give you some hints and tips, and I'll explain how you can do these extra activities. Okay. Now I've noticed some of you are in the chat saying that you like the visuals in the book, and that's great. We love this magazine style, so big pictures. They provide lots of support for the students to help them understand the main messages. Okay, so let me go on because I'm wary of time. So earlier we looked at the typical listening lesson stages. Now I've been talking a lot, and again, I want you to have the opportunity to think. So on the screen, you can see those typical listening lesson stages that I described earlier. This is a solid lesson, but look at the bottom of the screen. Can you think of any problems with this lesson? I'm going to give you some thinking time, and I want you to look through, and in the chat window, can you think of any problems with this lesson plan? Let me know your thoughts. I'll just give you 1 minute. I know we have lots of teachers of experience here, as well as new teachers. Don't hesitate to throw your ideas into the chat window. I'd love to see them. Okay, your thinking time starts now. While you're thinking, I'll take a sip of water and check my timing and my notes. Okay, so I can see many of you still answering that question, that you think, yes, there is lots of good listening, which is great. There is a lag in the webinar, so I'll keep looking at the chat window. Again, the question was, what problems can you see, or what potential issues can you see with this typical lesson? Okay, so some people saying, okay, not enough vocabulary. Some people saying the warm-up can be difficult. Okay, some people saying, oh, it could be a bit boring. Right, yeah, so we want to liven it up. So I'm going to give you some activities you can try to make it more lively. Okay, now some of you saying, no idea, looks like a solid lesson plan. It is solid, okay? You've got all the steps there. But I think there are a couple of steps that can be improved. Now, some of you are saying time. And let's agree that time can be a real challenge. When you're teaching a shorter lesson, you need to be very strict with yourself in your lesson planning about the time that you spend on each activity. So when I show you activities as we go through this section, let's think about how we can make them short, sharp, and effective. Okay, just taking a look here. Okay, some people saying, no problem, looks good. Some people saying, you're not sure how to extend. So let me keep moving forward, and I'm going to share with you a couple of potential improvements. On the screen, you can see some possible issues with this lesson plan. Okay, there's number one, there's not much time listening to the actual audio. Okay, so you can read through this page faster than I can say it. So to be efficient, I want you to read through this page and let me know when you've finished reading by typing F into the chat window. Now, Trin says students don't have enough vocabulary. So that can be a problem. I'm glad you said that. We're going to focus on vocabulary in just a minute. But I think with this particular lesson plan, it could be improved in some different ways. Today, I'm going to focus on the red circles. I'm going to focus on how we can add more listening simply and easily. I'm going to focus on how we can give students different activities to get them moving around and being active with listening. And finally, I'm going to think about how we can move from listening into speaking quickly and effectively. We want the students to take that listening lesson and do something with it. So looking at the chat here, many teachers saying not enough time. So let's keep that in mind. Okay? And I'll give you a couple of tips for that. So here are my 3 listening tips for today. And for each one, I'm going to give you 1 or 2 activity ideas. So the first listening tip I'm going to focus on is maximizing input for even more chances to listen. How can we quickly add more chances to listen? I'm going to look at that first of all. So let's look at that listening activity. Do you remember? This was the listening for gist activity. Students are going to listen and they're going to put the words in the correct order. Okay, so how would I do this? How would I add a quick extra listening step? Okay, here's a very simple activity, which is what I like to call low prep or no prep. And those are the best kind of activities, right? So on the board, I would simply put 5 different words or phrases, okay? And I'm going to ask the students to simply put them in the correct order. Okay? So I review the vocabulary on the board first of all. Here are those 5 topic words. Then I'm going to play the audio and I'm going to ask the students to put them in the correct order. Very, very simple. So let's have a quick listen to this. I think we have an example of the listening. So I'm going to ask Sophia to play the MP3 and let's listen to this.
Unit 1, Vocabulary and Listening.
Can you put these in the correct order, everybody?
3 and 4. 1. Emma.
Hi, can I ask you, what's your favourite place in town?
The shopping centre, I think.
The shopping centre? Why's that?
I don't know. My friends go there.
And you prefer this and not the park near your house, for example?
Yes, the park's dirty. This is cleaner, and I like the shops.
Okay.
So which word have we heard? Which one have we heard? Which one came first? Pop it in the chat.
2. Lucas.
My favourite place? I don't know, but maybe the bike shop.
The bike shop? Really? There are a lot of people with bikes in this town. When you go to school, do you prefer the bus or your bike?
My bike. The bus is more expensive and it's slower.
But bikes are more dangerous?
Yes, they are.
Okay, I can see your answers coming in now. Good, keep
3.
listening.
Dwayne.
What's your favourite place in town?
Oh, I'm not sure. Well, I'm not from here. I'm from New York, in the USA.
Oh, right.
Oxford is a nice city, though. Nicer than New York, I think.
Really? Why?
New York is more modern. I like older places.
Okay, now I'm going to pause the audio there. So this is an example of the audio track in level 1, unit 1. Now, if my students were a lower level, of course, I could simply pause the audio after each conversation so that they have more time to think and process. I'm watching the students, and if I can see they're having trouble, maybe I'll skip back to the beginning of the audio so that they have another chance. Okay? If my students are a higher level, I might just let the audio run. But I can see many of you getting the correct answers. This is not a challenge for you, of course. You are English teachers. But I hope you can see with this very simple activity, I've given students an extra reason to listen. I've added a simple extra listening, which just takes a couple of minutes. And I've got the students to motivated them to listen to the audio passage. So listen and order, still a very simple, effective activity with minimal prep for this level of student. So Sophia, let's remove the audio track from the screen. Yes, I can see all of you have got the correct answers there. Okay. All right, let me just check. Can you still hear me, everyone? If you can hear me, type yes into the chat window. Okay, remember the chat window is my window on your world. So I'm a little bit paranoid about the audio. Let me know if you can still hear me. Type yes into the chat window. So a nice simple activity there that you can throw in at the beginning of a listening lesson to get the students into the listening in a simple and general way. Let's now look at the speaking lesson. So this is a separate lesson, the speaking lesson. And here I mentioned you have the dialogue, and you can see the dialogue on the screen. Here it's between Chris and a woman he meets in town. Okay? Now, the great thing about this lesson is that it comes with a video, and you can download the video, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But video provides lots of opportunities for listening and different activities. And you can see I've put some of the different activities on the screen for you now. But let me show you one of my favorite ones, and that is video vocab bingo. Do you like bingo? Now, bingo is a classic activity. We all know how to do bingo. Let's make it interesting by using a listening or video track. So our topic is asking for directions. So you be my students. On the screen, you can see an image from this video. It's about asking for directions. I want you to think, and I want you to look at the screen. What 4 words or phrases do you think you will hear when I play this video? What 4 words or phrases do you think you will hear when I play this video? And I'd give the students a worksheet, or I just tell the students write 4 boxes. You can see on the screen, and they put those 4 words or phrases on their piece of paper. So type in the chat box, predict what words or phrases do you think these people are going to use. They're going to be asking for directions. What do you think? Okay, I'll give you just a few seconds to think about this. Okay, have you chosen your words or phrases? What do you think will come out? All right, so Now I'm going to take this opportunity to play the video. But in the class, I would tell the students, cover your eyes and look down at your page. Don't look at the screen, don't look at the video. Cover your eyes and look down at your bingo words. You have to listen. And if you get all 4 words correct, you throw your hands up in the air and you shout bingo as loudly as you possibly can. Okay? So students are motivated to listen to the video. We're going to use it as a listening activity. So Sophia, I'm going to ask Sophia to play the video. Now teachers, if you want to look away, that's fine. Or so you can see what the video looks like in Tieng 6, feel free to look at the video. It's okay. Sophia, please.
Excuse me, are we near the bus station here?
Have you got a map? Yes. Look, we're here and the bus station is in North Street.
Okay, and how far is it from here?
It's about 10 minutes on foot.
Right, thanks. And are there any shops around here?
No, but there are some shops in the high street. That's 5 minutes by bus from here.
That's great. Thanks for your help.
You're welcome.
The video away. How did you do, teachers? How did you do, teachers? Did you get any correct? Did anyone get bingo? Let me know in the chat window. Okay, so very simple activity using the video that we provide, okay, with Tieng 6 to turn a video into a listening activity, playing video bingo. Nice and simple. Okay, so if you're teaching the speaking lesson, think about how you can use those videos. And I'm really excited to share with you that you can get the videos to download onto your computer or your device, and then you can show them in the class. So for this course, we have a classroom presentation tool, which is a digital version of the book, and you can show it on your screen. The great thing is all of the audio and video is embedded in the software, so you can show it and you can play it. You don't have to mess around with a CD player if you don't want to. But if you right-click on the video in the classroom presentation tool and you choose Save Video As, and I've put it in red, you can save the video down to your computer, and that way you can use it without an internet connection in your class or in a listening lab or a language lab on your computer with a projector. So that's really, really convenient for you. So don't forget to use those videos for extra listening practice. Okay, let me go on now. And I'm going to give you another activity. This is a wonderfully simple activity where we use the tape script. Now the tape script, I'm a bit old-fashioned. I call it a tape script, the audio script. So the audio scripts are a wonderful way to provide lots of extra activities. And you can see here, I've put a link for you to a great resource. We have a blog which is packed full of teaching ideas from educators all over the world. And this idea comes from an article called 25 Ideas for Using Audio Scripts in the ELT Classroom. So what I've got on the screen is I've got the audio script from the video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the students in pairs. And I'm going to ask the students, I give each student the audio script, and I ask them to hide their audio scripts from the other student. This activity is called 6 words. Student A and student B, they keep their script secret, and they circle 6 words they are going to change in the script. So I'm student A, I change 6 words in the script. And then I read my script with the changed words, and student B has to listen and identify the words that I have changed. So listen carefully. Which words have I changed in this script? Hi, can I ask you, what's your favorite place in Da Nang? The shopping center, I think. The shopping center? Why is that? I don't know. My family goes there. And you prefer this and not the restaurant near your house, for example? Yes. The park's dirty. This is fantastic. And I like the shops. Okay, thanks. So all I've done, student A, I've changed 6 words, and student B has to listen and identify. And the only tool I need is copies of the audio script. Then student B can take their turn and student A has to listen. So a nice simple activity called 6 words in the script, where we're using the script and making it into a listening activity. Now, the great thing about this is in the listening classroom, there are 3 good sources of listening. Can you identify them? The first source of listening is, of course, the coursebook CD, the coursebook video, the coursebook audio. That's one kind of listening. But what are 2 other sources of listening practice? Well, the second one is the student. Students are a great source of listening practice, and you can see that here. Students can listen to each other. Even if the English is not perfect, it's good practice for students to listen to each other. And it means you move away from using the CD all the time. Now, there's another source of listening, and of course, that is the teacher. I can see in the chat window, many of you have identified correctly the words that I changed in the 6 words activity, which is great. So you listened intently. Now remember, you will receive a PDF version of this workshop in the next week or so. So you'll have all these activities there for you as well. All right, now I mentioned there were 3 sources of listening. The first was the coursebook audio. Second was students listening to each other. And of course, the third is the teacher. Your voices are so important. Students need to hear you and use you as a source of listening opportunities. So how can we do that? Well, of course, you can read the text, you can read aloud, but here's a fun activity that I think you'll enjoy. It's called Mystery Teacher Recording. So one idea is you've got the tape scripts in the teacher's guide. So I would take a tape script and, working with another teacher, I would record the tape script using my phone. Every mobile phone has a voice recorder, right? And I would record the tape script with another teacher. Then I would play that in the class as an opportunity for students to listen to me. But what the students have to do, can they guess the name of the mystery teacher in the voice recording? So what you could do is you could ask 2 other teachers, not yourself, to record the tape script again together. And then you play that in the class, and the students have to guess, which teacher is this? Wow, who is this? Is that the PE teacher? I didn't know he could speak English. Is that our English teacher? So this gives them a real reason to listen. And it's just using the tape script, so it's simple to set up. In my experience, other teachers were happy to give me a couple of minutes to record this kind of material. Now, if you want students to listen out of class, maybe they have internet access, you can use a free tool like Vocaroo. Vocaroo is not an Oxford University Press tool, so please be careful using it, but you can record in your voice in the browser at vocaroo.com. So you could record the listening script into your browser, and you could send the students a link or a QR code for them to listen to at home, on their internet, on their mobile device, and then they come to class and they've already listened to something. So definitely check that out. But don't forget, you are a great source of listening, and recording other teachers can also be good exposure for students listening to different accents. The model in the textbook is not the only model. Let's expose students to different accents from different people around you as well. Okay, so we've talked about maximizing more input, and I hope you've found these are activities which you could adapt and change for your classes. Let's now look at making listening more active. We don't want listening to be a passive activity. We want it to be active. We want the students to be mentally active, and we want them active in the classroom, right? Okay, so as you can see on the screen, I heart listening. So we want the students to love listening. And one way to do that is to try different activities. So many of you mentioned pre-listening, while listening, and post-listening earlier. So let me give you a quick tip for that. Let's focus on the pre-listening phase. Of course, when you prepare your lesson, one thing that you will do is, as a teacher, listen and read the audio script yourself. Think about where students might have difficulties. Think of ways to support them and decide on which pre-listening activity would be best. Your teacher's guide has options for you. The downloadable lesson plan has options for you. But you are teacher. Which activity do you think will be most fun for your students and most relevant? Of course, that's your responsibility. But I want to share with you today what I learned was the 3E approach. 3E approach. In the chat window, can you guess what are the 3 E's? I'm going to take a 30-second break while you guess into the chat. The 3 E's is a technique I use to remind myself when I'm planning a lesson. I ask myself the 3 E's. Can you guess what they are? Type them into the chat window, and please excuse me while I take a sip of water. Okay, I'm going to watch the chat window. Can you guess the 3 E's? If you don't know, it doesn't matter. Have a guess. We're all learning together here. Okay, so let's see what people say. I'm looking for the 3 E's in the chat window now. So when I'm planning my lessons, I use the 3E approach to remind me when I'm planning the lesson. Let's see if we get anybody through with some words starting with E. Okay, I can see some words coming through. Effective, engage. I'm afraid your names are going so quickly, I can't catch them. Elicit, ear, evaluate. These are fantastic ideas, everybody. Some of them are not right, but it doesn't matter. I would love to see your ideas. Okay, I'm going to put them on the screen. Here we go. Give yourself a round of applause if you got them correct. Okay, the first one is excite. The second one is engage. And the third one is extend. When I'm planning my lessons, I ask myself, is this warm-up activity going to excite my students? Am I going to engage them? Are they going to get engaged in the lesson, get engaged in the activity? Ask yourself that when you're looking at the lesson plan. And thirdly, do I remember to extend the listening into some kind of follow-up activity? And that's what I'm going to focus on next. But if I was to summarize, I saw this on a blog the other day. Ask yourself when you're lesson planning, why should they care? Why should my students care about this activity? Okay? They'll care if it's interesting, if it engages them physically. But I find this a very useful memory aid when I'm planning lessons. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go on to quickly running through some activities that I hope you will find excite, engage, and extend what we've got in the material. But I know many of you are worried about how long these activities take. That is a concern for any teacher when you have short lessons. Okay? So on the screen here is a really important point to remember. This is an article called The Dangers of Pre-Teaching. And this is an article by Chia Suan Chong. And she wrote an article recently in etprofessional.com where she points out, okay, although the pre-listening or pre-reading phase is important, it's not the main point of the lesson. Okay, the main point of the lesson is not the pre-teaching. Okay, the main point of the lesson is the listening comprehension, the receptive skills, the use of the CD. Okay, so what we want to do here is we want to be very careful that in our warm-up activities, we keep them short and snappy, right? And one thing that I say to myself, let me ask you, what is the best time to stop an activity, any kind of activity? Doesn't matter whether it's warm-up or a game. What is the best time to stop the activity? Okay. You know that situation where students are having a lot of fun and you want to keep going? It feels good. The students are having a good time. Well, the best time to stop an activity is when the students are having the most fun. That's when we need to stop and go on to the bulk of the lesson. Because if we stop when the students are having the most fun, then the next time we do the same activity, they want to do it. If we let the activity begin to get boring and go down, students remember, oh, this activity is boring. So one way to make your activity short is to stop when the students are having the most fun. A warm-up activity should be just a couple of minutes. Okay, so let's go on, and I'm going to again use this general listening activity from Unit 1 as my example. Our topic here is places, okay, and about town. So here is a pre-listening activity for you. It's called Vocabulary Carousel. Now you might look at this and say, wait a second, this is a vocabulary activity. Yes, but we're going to turn it into a listening activity. So how does this work? It's very simple. At the beginning of the class, I put my students in groups of 4. So 4 students in a group. And this is a brainstorming activity. 4 students in a group. And I give them a piece of A4 paper, you can see on the screen, and they divide it into 4 sections. Okay? And then what the students do is they look at the topics on the whiteboard. So here are 4 topics about town or shopping or whatever, and they write that on the piece of A4. So it looks like this. Can you see my piece of paper? Might be a bit difficult to see. Okay, I've got shopping, I've got cities, places, and you can see restaurants. So each group of 4 has a piece of paper. And then I'm going to give my students 4 minutes for this activity. And here's how it works. They sit in groups of 4 around the piece of paper, and they have to brainstorm for 1 minute vocabulary that they know in that area. So the students sitting where it says shopping, they brainstorm and write down any vocabulary words they know for shopping. Anything is okay. And they fill up that section of the piece of paper. Okay. Now, if the students are low level, they can perhaps write some words in Vietnamese, because later we will use that language. And then after 1 minute, the timer stops, the paper rotates, and the student looks at what is in front of them now, and they read what the other students wrote, and they add more vocabulary if they can. Then after 1 minute, they swap again. So 4 minutes, students can see each area and they add any vocabulary. But this is exposing them to the vocabulary and getting their ideas. Now I want to turn this into listening, so I can get students to shout out the vocabulary to me. I can put it on my whiteboard. If students have trouble with a vocabulary area, I can give a few examples on the whiteboard, but the students are listening to each other. They can also add to their piece of paper, so they listen to the vocabulary other groups have. They add any missing words to their piece of paper, and here we're expanding their background knowledge using a vocabulary carousel. So just a few minutes, something physical. Students are moving things around, okay? And very adaptable. If you have higher level students, push them for more vocabulary. If you have lower level students, okay, keep them supported. Okay, now let me take a look here. All right, so just going to take a look through my slides here. Now I'm going to give you, let me just ask Sophia. Sophia, can you give me a time check, please, on microphone? How long do I have?
Hi, Ali. You got about 10 more minutes and
Okay.
another 10 for Q&A.
Okay, so I've got 10 more minutes to focus on my activities, and then we're going to look at 10 more minutes for Q&A. So everyone bear with me, and I will go on to the next activity. So we looked at a pre-listening activity, and I'll quickly describe a while listening activity for you. So we're going to do something called a Dictogloss. Now, a Dictogloss, I don't know if you're familiar with a Dictogloss, but it's a very powerful activity. And some people have called it the king of activities. How does this work? So here you can see on the screen, I've got the writing activity. This is from the writing unit. And there's the writing passage there. Okay. So I'm not going to show the students the writing passage. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just dictate a couple of sentences from this writing passage. I'm going to dictate a couple of sentences from the writing passage. I want you to listen. Don't write anything down. Don't write anything down. Okay, here we go. First step, just listen. Okay, here we go. Ho Chi Minh City is in the south of Vietnam. It's got a population of about 9 million in 2019. It's a very modern city and the people are really friendly. There are many good amusement parks, shopping malls, and buildings here. Okay, finish. So the students listened to it one time. Now I'm going to say it one more time, and this time the students jot down some keywords. So are you ready? In the chat, just jot down a few of the keywords that you hear, only keywords. Here we go. Ho Chi Minh City is in the south of Vietnam. It's got a population of about 9 million in 2019. It's very modern, and the people are really friendly. There are many good amusement parks, shopping malls, and buildings here. Okay, that's the end. In the chat, can you note down a few keywords you heard? Not everything, just a few keywords. Okay. And on the screen, I'm giving you the instructions for how to do Dictogloss. So students listened once, no writing. The second time they listened, they wrote down just a few key words, okay? Now what they do, you can see part 3 on your screen. I put the students in groups of 4, and then step 4, they have to compare their notes, and they must recreate the text as close as possible to what they heard. Now I can see in the chat, some of you are noting keywords. That's fantastic. Okay, so then the students working in groups, they're going to work together to recreate what they heard as accurately as possible. So they've listened, but now they're going to use their knowledge of grammar, vocabulary, and they're going to speak a little bit to each other. This word here, this word here. So they negotiate with each other to recreate the passage. Then at the end, I can get one group to read out their passage aloud. And if the other students disagree, they say, "No, teacher, that's wrong, that's wrong." Okay, what do you think is correct? And another group tries again. So this is a wonderful way of using a reading passage as an interactive listening, dictation, writing, and grammar activity. It's called Dictogloss, and it really is one of the kings of activity types. I love it because it requires no preparation, just a little bit of a text. Okay, so I think the final activity for me to mention here, and I'm just going to go through it really, really quickly, is to use the songs. I'm really excited that in the back of Tieng 6, there are songs. Now, you all know that songs are great listening practice, fill in the blanks, listening comprehension, but there are many ways we can use songs. And I'm happy to say that in the teacher's guide, there is the song, there is a full lesson on how to use the song as a lesson if you want to do that. And at the bottom of your screen, you can see I've put a little star because we then use the song as the basis for a speaking activity. So I love songs as a source of material. I love singing, but I won't sing for you today. Instead, here's a simple idea which you can use. Take that song script, put the students in groups or pairs, and the students must cut up the song script. Okay, they can cut it up into 6 different parts. 6 different parts, and the students choose where they cut it up. Then they put those parts in an envelope, and then we play music and the envelopes get passed around the classroom. And then when the music stops, students open their envelope and they have to try and organize the cut up song script into the correct order. Then we play the song together, and students, while listening to the song, try and put the script in the correct order. So that's a nice, simple way you can use the song script interactively with students listening to the song as well. Okay, so I've done some different activities for you here today. What I'm going to do is the final part was to extend listening into speaking. And I'll just briefly mention this. You remember that extending into speaking activities is really important. Well, the final activity is a running dictation. What I'll do is when we send this presentation around as a PDF, I'll include instructions for you. But it's very simple. We take a listening passage, and then I take the tape script, I post different copies of the tape script around the room. I have students working in groups, and students must run one by one to the tape script, memorize a sentence, run back to their group, and they write it down to recreate the tape script together. So students are not only reading the tape script, they're memorizing it, and they're speaking it to a writer in their group. Okay, so to finish off today from me, I'm just going to do a quick reminder of the different resources that we have available for you. So at the beginning of the session, I talked about the fabulous resources that our partner has put together for you, and I want to quickly introduce those to you so you know where to find them, and then I'll leave a few minutes for questions. So in the PDF, when you receive this, don't forget to come to the back of the presentation here so you can see the resources. But I do just want to mention again, there is the classroom presentation tool, which is the online tool for you to use. There is a teacher's guide to accompany the course. And also we have downloadable lesson plans for you, as well as lesson plans which you can adapt. You can take these lesson plans and type in your own ideas and keep those on file. I also mentioned earlier the online information we've provided for you about the course. So how can you find out more information about Tieng 6? It's very simple. You do the course overview module. And if you go there, you will find information from my colleague about the pedagogy of the course, a complete run through of the unit and all the components, and useful information to help you prepare for your lessons. So my colleague will put a link on the screen for you to the course overview module. But again, when you get this PDF, there will be a link here for you, and you can also use the QR code to check that online module. All right, so lots of resources for you. I'm going to finish up here by just summarizing and trying to answer some questions. So I realize I've gone really quickly, but I know you have great listening skills. So the first thing is, Tieng and 6 Friends Plus has a really thorough step-by-step listening syllabus with lots of good listening built in. So there's lots of listening activities and support for you to do listening all the way through the course book. Secondly, let's look for those simple ways to add short listening activities to supplement the textbook and to extend the material. You will find extra ideas in the teacher's guide, but I hope you've enjoyed the extra activities I've shared with you today. So also, don't forget those tips. Maximize input. Look for all those different opportunities to listen. And also, let's also remember there to extend after the answers. So number 3 here. Look for those extension activities. Right, so phew. Let me just move on now and see if I can answer any questions for you. We've got some time left. So I'm going to go into the questions. Okay, so a question. So just to ask my moderator, I'm looking at the published questions. So Kui asks, or Kui C asks, in some listening lessons, the speaker's quick speed, use of linking words and so on can be difficult. How can I help my students with these? That's a great question, Kui. So the first point is, in Tieng and 6, we're very careful to have listening at the right level for the course material. What I would do is I would use the CD or the classroom presentation tool to stop, pause, and replay. And this is what I would call micro listening, just focusing in on one short segment at a time so the students can listen again and again and pick it up. And you as the teacher can draw their attention to this. So students struggle with, it's a book, it's a book, it's a book. Now you know and I know that is, it's a book. But they may need to listen a few times. So don't hesitate to break up and use the CD to break it into smaller chunks. Okay, Teacher Din says, if the listening's topic is too dry and unappealing, for example, environment, history, how can I help the students become more interested? That's a great question, Din. Of course, in every textbook or every course book, there'll be some contents which not all students are interested in. We all know that as teachers. My advice in that planning phases of the lesson is to look and see. Remember that 3E approach. Can you remember the 3 E's, everybody? Type them into the chat window. First of all, is there a way for me to excite my students about this topic? Even if the topic is not that exciting, can I make it into a game in some way? Can I make it into a guessing game? Can I make it into a challenge? Can I engage the students, the second E, by tying this topic to their personal lives? Okay, so let's say that the topic is, I don't know, shopping. Now, some students might not be interested in shopping, but if I personalize the topic, what kinds of shopping do you like? What would you like to buy if you had lots of money? Now, I've personalized the topic and it's immediately more interesting for the students. So try and personalize wherever you can. So thank you, Din, for that question. Okay, so Teacher Ta H says, are these activities only suitable for offline class? How about online class? Can we practice them? In my experience, yes, you can. You just need to adapt them a little bit. For example, let's take this activity, the vocabulary carousel. If I was doing this online, I would share my screen with maybe an Excel sheet or a PowerPoint with 4 columns: column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. And at the top of each column, I would put a different topic. And in their online groups, the students start at a different topic, and after 1 minute, they move across to the next topic, typing their ideas into the chat window in the online class. So with a little bit of adaptation, the principles still apply. But we do have to adapt, teacher Ta. I completely understand. Okay, I'm just looking at my clock. I think I've got 1 more minute for questions. So let's look at a question from teacher Lan D. And teacher Lan asks, how do we really teach students how to listen? Because it seems like when we do the listening activity, it's checking students' listening ability, not teaching them how to listen. That's a great question, teacher Lan. So throughout most course books, you will also find strategies for teaching listening. We want to give students the skills which they can use outside of the classroom, when they are away from you, when they are listening by themselves. And one way to do that is to get the students to listen and do something. In real life, we're usually listening and doing something, right? So let me give you an example. In a spoken conversation, students would listen and react. So one fun activity with students is to model some reactions with them. Good point. And then when students are listening to an activity, even if the listening activity is for a different purpose, encourage them to try using those reactions. So reacting to what's being said is also a skill. So you can drop in those skills practices like that in fun little ways. And another example would be, do you remember I showed you in the options lesson it was? Students listen and write. So in Tieng and 6, they won't only listen, they'll usually listen and then do something, and that's really important. Today, we're not looking specifically at teaching listening strategies, which is a topic, but if you Google or search for teaching listening strategies, I think teacher Lan D, you'll find lots of extra activities. Thank you for that great question. Okay, everybody, I've come to the end of my time. I hope that that's been useful for you. Let me know in the chat window. I realize I've gone very quickly, but I get really excited about this topic of listening, and I hope you found today useful preparation for using Tieng and 6, and that you can go away and try some of these activities with your students. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a pleasure sharing this morning with you. I'm going to pass you over to Sophia. Please listen carefully to what she says, because we have a quick survey for you to do. We look at all the survey results, so please spend just a couple more minutes with us. On the screen, you can see an agenda. We've covered a lot of ground today. Thanks again for your patience and your hard work. I wish you every success in your classes, everyone. Bye, and I hope to see you again in the future. Bye.